This week, self-described Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders jumped into the 2020 race, adding to a large and growing field of candidates who are taking the party further left. Joining us now, the chair of the Democratic National Committee, Tom Perez. Mr. Chairman, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Great to be with you, Chris.
President Trump is pretty clear about at least one way he intends to go after the Democratic Party and whoever you nominate in 2020. Take a look.
The Democrat Party has never been more outside of the mainstream. They're becoming the party of socialism, late-term abortion, open borders, and crime.
Whether it's the Green New Deal or Medicare for All or suggestions about very high tax rates on the super wealthy, how do you defend against President Trump's charge and effort to portray the Democratic Party, your tax and spend policies, as socialist?
This is one of the oldest tricks in the playbook, Chris. You go back 75 years when Republicans don't want to discuss the issues that matter to real people. They call it socialism. Social Security, when it was being debated, you had Republicans calling it socialism. The minimum wage in 1938, you had Republicans calling it socialism. Medicare, Ronald Reagan said, and I quote, "Medicare will lead to socialized medicine. Medicare will lead to socialism in America." The Affordable Care Act, the Children's Health Insurance Program, all of those things were socialism, socialism. Why do they do that? Because they're wrong on the issues. They don't want to talk about pre-existing conditions. We're right on that issue. We want to make sure if you're diabetic, you can keep your coverage. They don't want to, so they change the subject. And
okay.
That's what they do.
Some of those issues, climate change, health care, have been around for a while, but a new issue came up this past week. 3 Democratic candidates for president now say they support reparations, compensating the descendants of slaves. Here they are.
I have long thought that this country would be better off if we did find a way to do that.
America has a history of 200 years of slavery. Mm-hmm. We had Jim Crow.
And now Elizabeth Warren says she also supports reparations not only for slavery, but for Native Americans. You talk about some of these other issues and say, well, the Republicans have always called them socialists. Back in 2016, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders all dismissed the idea of reparations. And polls have shown that the vast majority of Americans are against the idea. Are you comfortable with some of your leading Democratic candidates talking about reparations compensating the descendants of victims of slavery?
Civil rights is the unfinished business of America, Chris, and we've seen throughout our nation's journey that we have more work to do. And that's why Democrats are talking about it. But what Democrats are talking most about right now is how do we build an economy that works for everyone and not just the few at the top? How do we make sure that if you have diabetes that we will bring down the cost of prescription drugs? How do we build an infrastructure program that's going to
Okay, I understand that.
To work?
But
that's
specifically reparations, do you think, is that something that will be in the Democratic platform, the idea that we are going to pay, the country is going to pay reparations, compensation to the victims, the descendants of victims of slavery?
That's something that'll be discussed during the course of the presidential nominating process. And what I think is going to be discussed at length during this nominating process is how do we make sure America works for everyone? I find it the whole interesting thing about the continued use of the word socialism is that repressive socialist regimes, 2 of their most frequent qualities are, number 1, they go after the press. They try to undermine the press. And number 2, they have endemic corruption. And I find it very ironic when you hear this president using the word socialist all the time. I mean, Putin, Kim, Castro, what they all have in common is they were doing so many of the same things. You shouldn't be attacking the press the way this president does. It's unprecedented. You shouldn't be.
I got to interrupt for a second. Are you putting the president in the same class with Putin and Kim and Castro?
I'm just saying authoritarian socialist regimes undermine the media. That is wrong. You shouldn't do that. Period. No footnotes. No exceptions. Authoritarian socialist regimes have endemic corruption. You should understand that Democrats won in 2018 in no small measure because of the culture of corruption engulfing this administration.
You saw the clip that we played earlier where the president was going through the litany of things he says the Democratic Party has now become. One of the things that he talks about is the Democrats as the party of open borders. On Tuesday, the House Democrats are likely going to pass a resolution of disapproval against a declaration of a national emergency. Any concerns that the president is going to be able to paint Democrats as soft on border security?
When you look at the facts belie that, Chris. The fact of the matter is that Democrats understand that you can have secure borders and the rule of law. That's what we have fought for. And as you correctly pointed out, I think in last Sunday's show, what this president has done is unprecedented. I think Mr. Miller was on this show. You correctly pointed out that there has been no factual circumstance where the president asked for X, Congress said no, and the president went ahead and did it. That's why the Heritage Foundation in 2011.
I hate it when people turn my own words against me. Well played, Mr. Chairman. Okay, let's turn to the Jussie Smollett case. After he claimed that he was the victim of a hate crime, Democrats rushed to his aid. You tweeted, let's call it what it is, a vicious hate crime. Kirsten Gillibrand wrote, it's the latest of too many hate crimes against LGBTQ people and people of color. And both Cory Booker and Kamala Harris called it a modern-day lynching. Here's how White House spokesperson Sarah Sanders responded to all of you.
It's another sad example of people so quick to want to attack and come after this president, much like you saw with the Covington kids.
Was this a rush to judgment and to play identity politics in an effort to attack the president?
You know, Chris, I spent the better part of a decade under Republican and Democratic administrations as a career federal hate crimes prosecutor. I saw these cases firsthand. If the allegations that have come out in recent days are true, it's unconscionable because hate crimes, the fact of the matter, are on the rise. And when you create a false situation, you are doing an injustice to all the people who've been victimized.
Do you think that you guys rushed too fast to...
We had the facts. We acted on the facts as we knew at the time. And here are the facts that we know today. Hate crimes are on the rise. And in the aftermath of Charlottesville, frankly, that was a layup for the president. He should have unequivocally said, there is no place for this. And yet he was empowering. He was giving permission. That was wrong. And we have to understand right now, the fact of the matter, hate crimes are on the rise, and that should be a bipartisan issue.
Okay. Let me ask you about something that people would say would be a layup for you. Do you still feel that Virginia Governor Northam should step down for wearing blackface 35 years ago? And do you support the Virginia House of Delegates holding a public hearing where the two women accusing Justin Fairfax, the lieutenant governor, of sexual assault can testify?
Well, let's take both questions together. I called for Governor Northam to step down. I think his ability to govern has been compromised. As President Lincoln once said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can do anything. Without it, you can't do anything.
So should he still step down?
Yes, I've called for that, and I think his ability to govern has been undermined.
And Fairfax?
I have a concern in the context of having a part-time state legislature conducting the hearings. I have been unequivocal in making sure that when allegations of this nature are made, that they are investigated. I don't think the Virginia House of Delegates and the Senate are the right place to investigate it. We should have an independent investigation that should be prompt, it should be thorough, it should be fair, and that's what should happen.
Okay, I got about a minute left. I got some bookkeeping to do. Will Milwaukee host the 2020 Democratic Convention?
We have 3 finalists, Milwaukee, Houston, and Miami. They're all in the hunt.
When are you going to decide?
We're hoping to make the decision within the next few weeks at the most. My goal is to make it by the end of the month. I hope to keep that, but my goal is to get it right. And if it takes a few days over, then we're going to make sure we get it right. We have an embarrassment of riches, quite frankly.
Finally, you have scheduled 12 Democratic debates, 6 this year, end of this year, 6 the beginning of next year. Will Fox News get at least one of the 2020 Democratic presidential debates?
We haven't made that decision yet. We have made the decision on the first 2 debates, and what we're doing in the first 2 debates, Chris, is unprecedented. 2 nights, making sure we have random draw, and here's our goal.
You know what would also be unprecedented? Giving us a debate.
Well, we'll see about that. But here's my number 1 goal. My number 1 goal is to make sure that everyone gets a fair shake. If we have 16 people in the race, 15 aren't going to make it to the mountaintop. My job is to make sure that everyone and their supporters feels like their candidate got a fair shake. And then my other job is to make sure that whoever wins has an infrastructure that will enable them to thrive. And that's why I enjoy coming here, talking to you, talking to your viewers about our vision of a Democratic Party, of a nation, frankly, that works for everyone.
Well, we welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us, Chairman
Always
Perez.
a pleasure.
Please come back, sir.
My pleasure. Look forward to it.